Hello and welcome to Doing It the Brazil Way. My name is Fred Wiles and I'm with Excellence in Travel. And today's special guest is Mr. Steve McKoy. He's one of the owners of Sankofa African Bar and Grill and Panella Restaurant down there in Salvador da Bahia, Brazil. So good, I guess it's good evening there for you right now, Steve. So good evening, Steve.
Absolutely, Fred. We're almost there in the evening. It's after 5 in the afternoon here, so I know it's a lot earlier for you there, but
Yeah.
for us, yeah, we're approaching evening almost here.
Right now, if you're wondering why he doesn't have a Brazilian accent, Steve is originally from London, England. So you're not hearing a Brazilian accent there. He moved to Salvador from London. And how I first found out or kind of somewhat met Steve, we have kind of a celebrity here. He was on television on the show International House Hunter, and so I thought it would be interesting to get in touch with him. So, one of the things I wanted to talk with Steve about today is what it's like to move from a major city like London down to Salvador, how life has been, and melding into the culture that's down there and everything. So, Steve, first of all, why don't you just tell everybody a little bit about yourself?
Okay, Fred. I I started really traveling to Brazil probably about 15 years ago, and my first experience of Brazil was going to Rio Carnival with a couple of friends, and we had an absolute blast. So we were there for a week, and we had such a fantastic time. When we were leaving to head back to London, we interestingly enough, we met some other guys from London who were heading to Salvador when we were heading home, and they couldn't believe that we were heading home and not to Salvador. We hadn't even at that time really heard anything about Salvador, and they said, "Well, this is the place to be going to." And to say that we were quite upset about that is an understatement. So we made a vow that a couple of years later we would return to Brazil, but this time to Salvador, and that's what we did. And so that's how we first discovered it. So we went to the carnival there, had a great time, and we, however, wanted to and felt that we should see the city. There was something magical about it and something interesting about it, that we should try and get back there outside of carnival, because for anyone who has not ventured to Salvador during the carnival time, the carnival takes over the city. I mean, it lasts for a week. It is absolutely huge and fantastic. It's known to be the largest street carnival in the world. I'm used to having grown up just a mile or so from the London Carnival here. We call it the Notting Hill Carnival, which lasts for 2 days and finishes at 7 p.m.
Oh gosh, nothing like Phil.
Nothing like Brazil. I was thrown into this place where suddenly there were people who were coming out to party, Fred, at midnight.
Oh yeah,
and,
oh yeah.
and it would last for a week, and that doesn't include the build up leading up to it, and and the time and moments afterwards. So it was an absolutely incredible experience. And we felt, though, that because we were really immersed in the whole sort of carnival spirit, that we wanted to investigate it and really explore it, have another opportunity to see it outside of carnival. So that's what I did a few years later, and that's what really gave me the opportunity to investigate and explore the city, to really get a feel for the people. The weather was still fantastic all year round, and I just completely fell in love with the place. So for me, it was definitely somewhere where I felt I would want to relocate to.
Now you've taken up residence there. You have a home there, correct?
I do have a home there, as actually was shown in the very program that you discussed, Fred, House Hunters International. So yes, I bought a home there, which is in the beach neighborhood of Baja,
Oh, I know
and
exactly where you are.
Yeah, so it's a great neighborhood. It's my place is about a 7-8 minute walk from the beach. So it's and a 7-8 minute walk therefore from the carnival as well. So
Exactly.
location wise, it's actually pretty good. Yeah.
Yeah, as the Baja area has a reputation of being one of the best urban beaches you could ever want to be at. So I know exactly the location you're talking about. And now, as a person coming from another country to live there, uh, culture-wise, has it been hard to become part of the culture, or is it something that's been pretty easy to meld into?
Uh, I think for myself, it has been. If I was to maybe break down the reasons, I mean, anyone who has either heard of Salvador or been to Salvador will know that it is, it was really the gateway in many ways for slaves entering Brazil hundreds of years ago, and therefore the descendants of those slaves are very much still there, and it is 80% at least of African descent, and so there is a real sort of a feel, if you like, of this feeling of people who have been around for a long time, at least the what they stand for, what they believe in, as in musically, food-wise, in terms of the type of food they eat and cook, is all had an influence really from West Africa and primarily Nigeria. So there's a real sort of sense and feel for that. And as someone coming over from London, I think what I found it much more difficult to adapt to, Fred, was the laid back lifestyle. So I come from a city where everything's moving quickly, as you can imagine, and you want to get something done today, you can get it done today, and that's the way it is. And that was definitely more of a shock. And of course, going from speaking English to Portuguese. So I had to prepare myself for that by taking lessons. And I had a Portuguese tutor who helped me with the language, to help me to prepare really to be able to speak Portuguese. So those were the two biggest factors. But in terms of slotting into the culture, and the way, the general sort of way of life, I found it fairly easy to do, and that's because I have to say the people there are so welcoming.
Yes, they're very welcoming. And as I tell people, when you were mentioning about the lifestyle being very laid back, when I send people down to places like, even from the Americas, when I send people down to places like the Bahamas, Brazil, Jamaica, I tell them because of the heat, nobody's rushing. So
No,
I
absolutely.
I always tell because Americans, we are very pushy, also very pushy, and want things done yesterday. And as I always tell everybody, I said, when you go down there, just slow down, because
You have to, yeah,
yeah, you have to. I
absolutely.
say, as hot as it is, if you're running around like a mad person, you're going to wind up having a heart attack, so a heat stroke. So I just tell them you
Yeah,
have to slow
yeah,
down. So
you
no,
have to,
I totally. It's funny you mentioned that. I totally understand that all the way around. But
yeah.
it's a beautiful, like you said, the people themselves is what makes it so magical being
Oh
down
yeah,
there.
yeah. They are, as I say, very 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 welcoming, very very friendly. I mean, I when I first went, I went back to Salvador after the carnival. After I went to the carnival, a few years later, I went back there in 2006 actually, and I went with a friend, and I left my friend on the beach. I went off to visit some people and just to try and get around a bit. She wanted to have a bit of a suntan, so I left her on the beach all alone, and I returned like 4 or 5 hours later, Fred, to see her completely surrounded by a group of people who had now befriended her, had welcomed her, and she was now fully in with with her new friends. And I'd left her for 4 or 5 hours. She said it was absolutely fantastic. She wasn't allowed to be left alone, in terms of that, and she welcomed it. It was absolutely great.
Yeah, that's the beautiful thing about that area. It's just, and I had been to Rio and to a couple of other cities, Manaus and to the Amazon, but by far, uh, Salvador is the place that, because my wife and I are even looking at purchasing some property down there at some point in our lives. But
Hmm.
by far, we both love that area. It's just the area to see, and it doesn't get as much play as Rio does, of course.
Yeah,
But
absolutely. But
but
they when they talk about the two, and they say that Rio is the heart of Brazil, Salvador is the soul, and
ex- exactly.
that I think they've pretty much summed that up there, right
Exactly.
there.
Yeah, how have you gotten into the foods compared to London? Because London's food is a lot different than it is down there in Salvador.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting that you say that. I mean, what we have in London, as I'm sure you have in the States, there's a lot of choice. So you can have, whether it be anything from the Caribbean to, I'm sure, Brazilian, Italian, French, Spanish, anything you really want to have, whether it be Thai or Chinese. I think in Salvador, particularly, there's less choice in terms of meals. But what you'll find is that there are dishes that are prepared in Salvador that you won't find anywhere else in Brazil. So because of, again, of the African influence and the use of palm oil,
Oh yeah.
they have various dishes, and one of their signature dish, the signature dish of Salvador Bahia is moqueca.
Oh
And
yeah.
this, yeah, you know what I'm talking about.
Oh
And
yeah.
this,
There's
and
nothing like
this
it.
moqueca dish, it's I tell you, I can't get enough of it when I'm there. And you can go to you can go to 5 different restaurants there and have 5 different style moquecas. So it's always pretty interesting.
Yeah, that moqueca, I could sit and eat that all day long, and of course, it does nothing for the waistline. But
No, you have to ignore the waistline when you're choosing moqueca for
exactly,
sure.
exactly. And I could eat that all day long. And one of the things when I carry groups down, one of the things I do to introduce them to, because a lot of times we'll get in and it's late in the evening, and so one of the things I'll do to introduce them to just the people is I'll carry them by one of the local outdoor cafes and get them to learn teach them how to order an carriage.
Ah,
I
Acarajé.
yeah,
Yeah,
I
indeed,
make sure
indeed.
they realize this is the poor person's meal here. So that I make sure they
Absolutely.
learn how to order one of those, and just to get them brought in. And of course, you always got to get them caipirinha. And so by the time they get the carriage down and the caipirinha, I'll lead them on back to the hotel.
Yeah,
On a,
indeed, indeed, indeed. Yes, that's a true, really, it's the true spirit of Salvador Bahia and of Brazil. I mean, Caprinas for me are one of the joys of me heading back to Salvador when I do. They have them here in London, of course, but they are by no means the same as you can imagine.
yeah.
Um, and when I do have them in Salvador, what I find is I underestimate the strength of the first one that I try for it. So of course, after in London I can have 4 or 5. I go to Salvador and I have a couple, and I go to I go to get up to walk away,
Oh yeah.
and suddenly my legs start wobbling. I feel a little strange, and I realize, of course, yeah, I know what that is. I know what that's all about.
As I tell people, when you're there and you have a couple of caipirinhas, because Salvador there's so much music in the streets, you're getting into the caipirinhas when you're starting to feel your body swing to the music and you had no control over it whatsoever.
Oh,
So
absolutely.
that's
And
what
and
awesome.
oh, and these people like to party. I mean, I've been to a few cities in Brazil, but whew,
Oh
in
yeah.
terms of people who like to have a party for having a party's sake, I tell you, they're very difficult to beat. Wow, these people love to party. That is
Oh,
for
very
sure.